to the ceiling that don't work anymore, so I need to speak this way. So we are going to keep you muted, just so you know, and if you have questions, please type them in the chat box. We have Christine here who will then let us know if you've typed in a question, and she will ask it. Or if you have a comment, it doesn't have to be a question. If you have any comments, you can type them right in there, and she'll let the whole group know about those. So thanks for joining us. This is the transportation meeting. This is Lisa Mathis from OPRA. We are going to look at a proposal today that has been given to DOD, to the department, to look over. So hopefully you're all in the right meeting, and that's what you were looking for. And so we're going to start by just doing some introductions for who's in the room. We have quite a few in the room, too. So this is Lisa Mathis with OPRA, Christine Tubble with OPRA.
Adam Preston Filippo with Bus Service. Dane Patterson with Bus Service.
Grant Hanrahan with BioQuest.
Arvin Cason, Core Care. Amanda Kennedy, Learning Never Ends.
Scott DeLong, CSI.
Gary Brown with Brady Brown.
Maureen Schroeder, Quinn and Home.
And we have 44 people online. That's a lot, so we're not going to go through everybody, but thank you for joining us.
So I'll start by, everybody online, you should be able to see the proposal on your screen. Some of you might have seen this proposal before. There might have been a few modifications since you've seen it, depending on when you saw this last. So this proposal came out of a group that was created by DOD, and we're tasked with creating some kind of a transportation model that had some certain criteria. And those criteria were that this proposal would incentivize the use of taking smaller groups out into the community, and whoops. We're going to try to get everybody muted here.
Okay.
I thought we had everybody muted.
So people who get it, I think we're
okay, we should be good now. So once again, the items that DOD were looking for in this proposal was that it would incentivize smaller groups getting out into the community, and that would put it in alignment with the HCBS setting rule and the Ohio Day Array rules. That it would create some flexibility around what kind of vehicles that providers could use, and that it would also they wanted this proposal to combine NMT transportation and HPC transportation together. This proposal doesn't do that, but it at least aligns those two types of transportation together. What DOD was saying is that to a family, transportation is transportation, and that to try to simplify the system would be better for the individuals served and their families, and well, just to simplify the system. It's usually something we're all working towards. Let's see. Oh, and that this would also help to give more opportunities for people to get where they wanted to go when they wanted to go there. So those were some of the things DOD was looking for. So this is the proposal that resulted for this. This was at least 2 years work, maybe more. 2 years. Okay, so this was about 2 years of work by this committee. There were other proposals that were given to DOD that were kicked back, and they said start over. There was at least one like that. So this is where you landed, and I'm just going to review it, and then we'll see if we have questions and some conversation around this. So there will still be a per trip rate available. As you can see, that's the first box there with all the different rates based on your cost of doing business area. And so that rate would be, you can see that it now incentivizes the 1 to 4 passengers versus a larger amount of passengers on the van. There's also an add-on if you have to have any kind of a modified vehicle. They call it a wheelchair add-on here for at this stage in the game. That is probably not what it would be called, because it would include more than people just in wheelchairs. Anybody who needs any kind of a modification at all for their vehicle would get that extra $10.19 per trip per person, and that would be somebody who maybe even needed like a valet seat, or what are some other? Maybe they are in a wheelchair, but then they're placed into a seat.
Yeah, wheelchair transfer.
Yeah,
They need a mechanical lift to get in and out of the vehicle, but may not necessarily be in a wheelchair.
yeah. So, and we would, you know, make sure the language around there was, in fact, well, Gary, you'd come up with some suggestions about that, right? That it would, if there was an SSA who was saying, well, they do or don't need an add-on, and the provider's like, look, they do need the add-on, that would the language would say something about then an OT would do some type of assessment to verify whether that person needed the wheelchair add-on or not. Let's see, so this, the NMT would be used to, or the per trip rate would be used to go to or from the start and of the service. So for most of you, that means to get them to and from your day facility. For providers who no longer have a building, that would be just to their first point where the delivery of the service starts, of the day rate service starts, and then at the end of the day, from wherever their last point was for that service back home, if that makes sense. Because we've got two different models out there now, one that's facility-based and one that is not. So that would accommodate both of those. Let's see, so then we're going to move down to the per mile rate. So the per mile rate would be used for day providers when they were taking people to and from the community during the day service. So that is, and I know we've had different ways of calling it, so that would maybe be what you would call the community integration piece of your day services. So the one that you're currently not able to bill for. So this allows you a way to bill this. This rate would also be utilized by HPC providers who are horribly underfunded right now, and would allow them to, you know, maybe this isn't still a perfect system for them on getting the rates higher, but it certainly allows them to recoup more money of what it costs them to transport people. And so this does have, with this model, it's a little different than the per trip. On the per trip model, if you have somebody that needs that wheelchair add-on or whatever it's going to be called, somebody who needs a modified vehicle, in the per trip, you get to add on the 1019 per person that needs just for the people that need the modified vehicle. When you are using the per mile, right now as this stands, everyone in that vehicle with that person that needs the modified vehicle will be billed at the higher rate, the 94 cents. It was just one person. The 94 cents per mile versus the 54 cents per mile. I hope that makes sense. You
got one question from
Sure.
Dan. Would home providers be able to get the per trip rate when they take individuals to day program/work?
Yes, you would be able to.
As long as it's in the ISP, as long as you're listening to that.
Yeah.
Now, can you go back to the per mile one more time? So the standard mileage is 54,
Mm-hmm.
and if it's a modified vehicle that's required for the wheelchair, it's going to jump to 94. And then on the 2 to 3 passengers, that's that 27 cents times 2 or 3.
Right, that's correct.
And 47 cents.
Same way mileage works for that.
Okay. So 4 plus, it's capped at 4 like it is, and so we're at 80 cents per mile.
Yes. Good question.
So
I guess that's the way I read it. I read it as 2 to 3 passengers. If you have 2 to 3 passengers on a standard vehicle, then it's 27 cents for that vehicle, not per person. And
No,
it is
per
multiplied
person.
by the person? Okay. Or the
It's
individual.
the same way as
Got it.
the mileage rate is applicable today.
Right.
Only the amounts change.
And one of the reasons that this piece is like that per mile piece is like that, because we know, even though it seems like it'd be complicated to bill, we know that the HPC providers already have systems that can bill using this model. And so we know it's not impossible. So no one's going to have to recreate billing. It does mean if you don't provide homemaker personal care, you're going to have to call your buddies or your opera friends here and be like, hey, if you provide NMT, tell me how you built efficiencies in the billing this per mile rate. So we weren't totally recreating the wheel. Now, I do think this is the one flaw in it that Dodd might try to push back on, because you're actually making more money with more passengers. That would be the one thing that I think,
The
no.
way it is today.
Yeah, I know, but that doesn't mean that, yeah. I mean, we could try to make that argument, but I think that's what they're,
I mean, that's the way homemaker personal care rates are constructed,
yeah.
that's the way mileage rates are constructed. So unless the department has a total rethinking of their philosophy on ratios as it comes to all billing rates,
Right. Good point, good point.
So,
I'll buy that one.
Bill asks, will the rate move as the federal rate changes from time to time?
That question was asked. I don't think it could move. I don't think it can move that. I don't know if they can write it in that way, because would they have to reopen the rules every time the rate changes the federal, that 54 cents a mile? That is the.
What's the question?
Will the rate move, and I'm assuming that's the mileage rate, move as the federal rate changes from time to time?
That's always been, that's been a question for 14 years. The answer is they're not going to write in an administrative rule that rates will change based on what the federal reimbursement mileage rate changes, because they have never used it anyway. So this would be the first time they would ever be using it, because the rates have always been less than the federal reimbursement rate. Number two, they can't write a rule that first is not approved by CMS, because all rates are approved by CMS. And number two, they can't write a rule that changes how much the state is going to pay for something that goes past a 2-year time period. So you can't write something in an administrative rule that requires the legislature to appropriate more money.
Well, we're talking about money, just so everybody does realize, this is going to bring in what, well, at least at first, we have not crunched any numbers, but what we're being told is this will bring in an additional, what did I say, $15 to $17 million into the system, and so county boards will have to bring in another, come up with another approximately $7 million in match. And so county boards are on board with this so far.
So they are willing to match.
Yeah, so far, I mean, I just checked with Scott Marks today. We've been going around trying to sell this proposal, and it looks like county boards are going to be on board with this. So it really comes down to then, will Dodd be okay with it? Are they willing to come up with the extra money? Do they,
Wendy asks, in their own vehicle. Wendy, could you expand on that? I think it was probably in relation to another question. But while she is responding, would the NMT requirements then apply to home providers in that case, such as mandatory drug tests, et cetera?
That part has not been, they haven't worked out the actual details of the rule yet.
Okay.
So we don't know yet. There would have to be some alignment between rules then. And we've certainly, the group has certainly worked on that. This group that Scott Marks heads up, they've looked at it some, but I think everyone's kind of sitting tight, was my understanding, now until, because if we're told no now, then, there's not any reason to work on the
Christine,
specific.
could you read the question one more time?
Yeah, I don't understand the question.
Okay, go ahead.
Would the NMT requirements, so I think the requirements laid out in the NMT rule, apply to home providers, so HPC, people who provide HPC transportation, such as mandatory drug tests?
Well, are you saying the per mileage is HPC right now? Is that what they're asking?
I think so. Like, we're saying that this is combining NMT and HPC. I think they're saying, are they going to combine them?
It's a separate.
It is not. There would still be a non-medical transportation rule, and there would still be a mileage rule.
Okay, so they're going to.
So they're not, I mean, that originally they wanted to combine them. There's many reasons why it would be impossible to combine them. First of all, you've got ODDP ranges and you have maximums for transportation under non-medical transportation, and how you would combine them, within the, the current maximums, I have no clue how you would do that. You have to make something up. But we walked away from the combining months ago.
And that's right, and I apologize for my incorrect answer. I was thinking about the proposal, gosh, probably several proposals ago. Yeah, because the group had started to look at aligning some of those rules that you're talking about, so. But this does allow you, I hope everyone realizes this, for the per trip rate, then you can use different vehicles then. You're not locked into those bigger vans. That's one of the.
And I think Wendy clarified, so meaning is staff take their folks to ADS in their own car, and during an employment, volunteer opportunities, and staff cards, is so any certifications required?
That's what the staff is providing NMT services to their day program or voc or community employment. I think the other question would be really, can staff utilize their own personal vehicle while performing HPC services? So staff can bill HPC services for their unit rate, but can staff also, as a company, if the staff is using their personal vehicle to provide HPC services for an individual, can that company also claim mileage?
Right.
Even though it's a personal vehicle versus a company vehicle.
Doesn't make any difference to us. Correct.
So it could be a.
So will they be able to bill NMT?
The bottom line is the provider is billing, not the staff person, so.
But if
It
they
doesn't make
bill
any
it,
difference to us.
they're still compliant with the rule.
Correct.
That's just below.
Right, so that's
Now,
HPC service.
I mean, currently, the administrative rule says, notwithstanding everything in the non-medical transportation rule, you could still transport somebody to and from a day service or one of the day array services, including supported employment, using homemaker personal care and the mileage rate.
They're doing that.
The question at the end of the day is, do people want that clause to stay in there or not to stay in
So,
there? I have my personal opinion, but.
so Wendy, let us know if that answered your question. And then Amy asked, did you say that all individuals would bill the modified vehicle mileage rate if only one person needs a modified vehicle?
Yes, for the per mile, yes. Go ahead.
So did you say that all individuals, so if you have more than one individual in the car while you're billing mileage, but only one person needs modified, you do charge bill the modified vehicle for everyone in there?
Yes. But you at least have to have one person
Correct.
requiring the modified vehicle.
To bill for
Yes.
that, yeah. What other questions do we have? Anybody in the room that has a question?
Is there a possibility of increasing, so I understand the concept, and I mean, I'm on the work group and so forth, and we've gone back and forth, a lot of different proposals and so forth. And I know this seems to have a lot more momentum than the other proposals that were pushed out. I really understand the concept of one, to incentivize other providers, and in order to increase probability of getting transportation service and so forth for those really hard locations. You know, I like the two-tier system, the 1 to 4 passengers at a high rate per trip, but if you look at the 5 passengers or more, I mean, regardless of what category you're in, you're taking a $3 hit, $2 to $3 hit per person per trip. A lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but there are agencies out there that have more than 8 passengers per vehicle per route. Just because of the way things are set up, you know, we have, there might be facilities that have residential facilities that may have 8-bed ICF home or 4-bed waiver home, and they all sometimes go to the same location, or maybe they split up. So I think in a way that I'm not against it, but I really think that we need to reconsider taking over that second tier and bumping it up at least $1. So I think a lot of companies or nonprofit or private organizations are going to take a hit. Bottom line, we're going to take a hit with annual Medicaid revenue.
Business.
But sometimes you can't change. Yes, you can. Going forward, you can't change your way of doing business strategically. I mean, you're looking at what makes the most geographical sense, but, I mean, companies or organizations out there already have sites that are already in place that have 8-bed homes that we're transporting to the same location. I mean, you really need, we as an organization need to revamp and look at, you know, what's a better way of doing business? Do we now look at buying smaller vehicles? What do we do with these bigger vehicles that we still need because we still have that? I mean, you can look at the going forward, maybe in 5-year, 3-year future, but your present time in the next 3 years, this is what we have. We have the larger vehicles, 18 capacity vehicles, that's what it requires. And even some of those vehicles that we have, we're not filling the buses because we can't have individuals next to each other because of the behavioral concerns.
And I think that though, when you think about it, that is another reason to go to smaller vehicles. If someone who can't have other people sitting around them, what are they trying to tell you? They don't want to be in a big van. That's exactly,
It
this
might help,
would allow you to take that.
yeah, it might help to talk about the process that we went through the last few months.
Yeah.
Because we're not gonna come up with a model that is going to fit exactly what everybody has out there. We're not. And if anybody thinks we are, then, I don't know about you, but I got a lot of things I need to do today. I'll go do them. The fact of the matter is that everybody that has been providing transportation using, modified vehicles has been losing money for a very, very long time. Everybody who has been providing transportation under mileage and routine homemaker personal care has been losing a lot of money for a very, very, very long time. And then if you couple that with providing transportation in a modified vehicle, doing homemaker personal care and the mileage rates, you're losing a ton of money. I've done this analysis with many providers that I work with, and frankly, every time they turn the key, they're losing 50 cents on the dollar. That's pretty much what the numbers look like. This is an attempt to try and move the system to, you don't have winners and losers. Now you have at least people that are getting closer to getting reimbursed their actual costs.
And people are getting reimbursed for services that right now they're not getting reimbursed for at all.
Yeah. And the third one is
Yeah, that's.
we're doing community outings and community integration during the daytime, folks, and you're billing nothing for it. Thank you very much for your donation. At least now you can bill mileage. So you may have, you can pick on any piece of any model and say, gee, look, I'm losing money. But then you can look at other pieces where, no, you're going to do better than you did before. What I will tell you is if you don't have a diversified model, I don't care which one you pick. I mean, it's like everything else in this life. If you don't diversify, then there will be one thing that will get you. So if you're only providing this type of transportation and this narrow bandwidth, and it doesn't fit a model, then it probably isn't going to help you.
Can I go back to the smaller vehicle regarding, we have, I can't even tell you, a handful of passengers that require space. And I know, Lisa, we talked about, maybe that's somebody's telling you something that maybe they can't be in a big bus or a bigger vehicle and they need a smaller, like a caravan or a sedan. But that's not always the case either. We do have individuals, I have several individuals that can't be around. They have to have that space. They really kind of need either an individualized transportation where it's just that person being transported by, essentially, it's a 2-to-1 ratio because of their high behavioral or medical needs. But it's almost like you don't have a choice but to put them on maybe a 12 or 8 capacity vehicle because it at least allows that space for that individual. So, you can kind of go back and forth and say, what's the better cost way of doing business? Do I have 2 staff with 1 person and kill the cost of staffing and just transporting 1 person versus if I can pick up same amount of passengers, maybe have additional passengers, but allow that space that that individual requires because of whatever reason. I mean, that's what we constantly are battling with, of making sure I may have a bigger vehicle, but I may only have 6 passengers because of their specific transportation needs. And I think we as a provider and other providers, we have to be able to meet those needs.
And I appreciate that you do meet those needs. And so maybe another way to look at that is to say, then do you make sure that that van, even though you're using, maybe you use a van that is a little bit bigger, but you're only putting 4 people on it, so you're getting, including that person, so you're getting that little bit higher rate. This could be perfect for everything. It just couldn't. And when you look at this, I know you were in some of those meetings and we discussed that, and we just didn't make it there to accommodate every little thing. Now, maybe there's a way that county boards can assist with that, and somehow, I don't know what that would be, a way that maybe they can offset that somehow. I'm not sure. I know that one of the things that, and you might have been in the meeting where they were saying this, with some of the county board people were saying, well, for some of these individuals, it might actually assist them, because then transportation would almost be more naturalized, that, a lot of people then would have their staff maybe bring them in if they have a lot of issues like that. Not to say, if it's still 2 to 1, then that's an issue. They'd have to listen, and this won't answer that. I don't know how many people in the system are like that.
This is a fee-for-service program. This is not a cost-based reimbursement program. If we're a cost-based reimbursement program, we wouldn't be having all these conversations. We'd file costs. It'd be like an ICF, it would be an indirect, and we would get it covered as we're efficient providers. The bottom line is that in a fee-for-service program, you try and construct rates that you will have some winners and you will have some losers. And so when I say the word diversify, I really mean it. Because if you don't diversify, then you have no opportunity for winners and losers. You only have the opportunity for a winner or a loser. So there are other sides to this that can be very, very, very fruitful from a cost standpoint. This is just my guess, my opinion. If you want to go try and tweak these numbers now, I have no confidence level to sit here today and tell you that Dodd's going to accept this to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to go tweak it some more, I can be 100% wrong too, but I will tell you, when fiscal starts doing the math on this, they're going to have questions.
Well, I know when we originally started this whole process, and I kind of came in the middle of it, but there was a huge discussion about, that we were essentially going to look at the current budget, and this is just transportation, but NMT budget, and then we weren't going to put any more money into it. We're just going to take this budget and just reallocate it. And now, obviously with adding, increasing some of the rates and so forth, the counties, there's going to need to be more money put into it. Whether the county's going to allocate those funds or not. I guess my concern is, are those counties going to be able to, are they all in agreement, all 88 counties in agreement of, okay, we'll put X amount of money towards, I would hope that they would, considering that,
Well, first of all 88 county boards don't have to be in agreement. That's number one.
Right.
So this would be a this is a state administered waiver program. This would be a state administrative rule. These would be the rates. So at the end of the day, can Scott muster enough support from the County Board Association to support this? Is the question, not will all 88 counties say yes.
Right.
We're not going to get all 2,000 providers to say yes.
We got quite a few comments online. Amy says, if everyone in a modified vehicle uses a higher rate, even though only maybe one person needs it, it would create a challenge for SSAs to know what to authorize in the pause, because it is not based on their needs, but the needs of others that are going to the same location at the same time. I believe that's in respect to mileage.
That is true, and that has been discussed, and so far, everybody's still on board with it as it is, even though that will affect some people's budgets. And I don't know if Gary, you know more detail about that. I know Scott Marks has talked to county boards about that at length. So,
Well, I want you to think about it in terms of the way the rule is written today. The non-medical transportation rule is written based on the type of vehicle, not the needs of the person using the vehicle. It's very clear. So this kind of blends it. You've got some aspects that are based on the vehicle, and you have some aspects that are based on the person's needs that are going to be in the vehicle with the add-on. So it's kind of a blend. But right now, it has absolutely nothing to do with the needs of the person in the vehicle. It has everything to do with the vehicle. That is the way the rule is written.
And I do like that has been taken out, because not a lot of providers, I mean, let's face it, a wheelchair accessible vehicle is a lot more expensive than a standard vehicle. But I think we really need to consider looking at, I think we do need to tweak this in a way where, because we can't, at this point, if it does pass, if it does go through, we can't go down. I think in a way, I'm asking that we look at increasing at least $1 for the 5 or more passengers, and then, you know, if you take in the 1 to 4 passenger, you can either leave that at it, but somehow there has to be, I mean, we know we're going to take it. We know providers that have bigger vehicles because of the business that we have. We're going to take a hit regardless of what happens, and we're prepared for that, and we have to prepare for it fiscally and strategically. But if this does go through, and if it does get pushed through, then this is it. We can never go back up on the per trip rate. I mean, we're going down. We're going substantially down from what we have right now, regardless of what category.
Right. And I think, well.
And I understand. Like I said, I'm not trying to, but I just think that, you know, I appreciate the fact that we're incentivizing providers that have the smaller vehicles. I do appreciate the fact that we're taking away, it doesn't matter what kind of vehicle you have, it's not, now we're basing it on the number of passengers. I'm saying that you really need to look at taking the two-tier system and increasing it at least by $1 for the 5 or more passengers. So I'm not really sure where I don't really understand exactly where those all came from.
Do any of your folks require a modification to a vehicle?
Absolutely, yes, they do.
Okay, so
Not all, believe it or not. I mean, I crunch my numbers.
Okay. So when you crunch your numbers, you're putting the add-ons in there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So when we look at this,
are you looking to see how much more mileage you're going to get the bill during the daytime that you don't bill at all right now?
yes, we looked at that, and believe it or not, I mean, yeah, that does help, but this is for a company that has transportation department. We have day program, community employment. So, you know, we're kind of in silos. Even though we're one organization, you're still in silos. So we have a budget for here, we have a budget for this department, and so forth. But
So it's not helping the NMT budget part.
it's not.
But it's probably helping some of your other departments.
It will help. It definitely will help the day program in regards, because this is something that we're not allowed to do right now. It's against rules and regulations. You know, we have a nice blend of individuals with different types of funding. A lot of them are ICF. And then I'll be honest, like I know in our programs right now, we have 93 individuals that have a waiver.
Right.
That doesn't mean that they can always go out. That doesn't mean they're not always integrated as much because of behavioral issues and so forth and high needs and so forth. So, yeah, I think that that's a great idea. I like that we're able to utilize that.
You do HPC also, correct?
Yes, our company does HPC services, and we are billing at the mileage, and that's
So
not
when you
changing.
look at the big picture of the whole system, at your whole organization, where do you land? When you unsilo your own organization,
to re-crunch everything.
I think it's important that you know that.
And I understand that, but I know, I mean, I have to look at globally, we're looking at everything. What's this gonna do for the
your
company
whole
overall?
Yes.
But I can tell you with gas prices going up to $3 by June, I mean, that's great that they're increasing that, and this is brand new where they're actually allowing us to have a modified vehicle mileage, which they never have. Since Medicaid hit the world, we never had a modified vehicle mileage. Of course, that's changing because of everything else.
If you unsilo your rates and it still have a.
I know we haven't.
You can send us.
I'm aware that we haven't had any rate changes.
For your whole organization, we will, let's have you.
Okay,
With Gary.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
let me do some more questions here.
Bo says, and this was, I apologize, like 15 minutes ago, he said, the woman speaking is completely correct, and I believe it was you, Maureen. Lisa asks, or says, the providers like us who have a high number of clients on a route would just change the routes to eliminate the 5+ higher routes, which could lead to clients getting to work later than normal and not at day services as long.
I mean,
Wendy
when
says
you're
she
changing
agrees.
provider, you have to look at everything. You have to look at the staff ratio at home. You have to look at what time do they need to be at work, or what time do they need to be at their programming, and so forth. So as a provider, it's very, very difficult, and you have to think of everything. And if you don't think of this, and something comes up. So, I mean, yes, we can always break down. We can try and look at breaking down our routes, but you're increasing mileage, increasing gas. There's a high probability that individuals are not going to get to their programming at the times that they need to be. We're not going to be able to build a 5-hour unit rate, so, the daily rate.
Right.
It's just going to be,
It is a lot of work. I guess, and I'll let Christine read some more questions here in a minute. I think we need to decide on, do we turn away $16 to $17 million into our system or not? So, but go ahead, Christine.
Roy says, just based on NMT and our current people we transport, assuming that wheelchair add-on for the people we transport, and assuming all the same, not considering any additional HPC we could build, it will be a reduction of 3.8%. Lisa, this is in response way back to her question earlier about the pause. So that doesn't answer how the SSAs will address how much is authorized on the pause for the client.
Right, it doesn't address that, but I believe they have a plan on how they will.
I think the plan was maximize, go to the top,
Yeah.
go to the top tier, even if someone doesn't require it, but because it's going to be a logistical nightmare. It's going to be a billing nightmare, but I think that's the last thing you have to worry about right now. But in regards to the SAs putting NMT services or HPC services on pause, they're going to have to take the highest, not the lower, the mean, but the highest level. And quite frankly, they're not going to reach that. They're not even going to get near that budget. So individuals that require a modified vehicle, yes, they will hit that budget.
Tracy asks, in response to Amy's comment, what if the one person that got you the modified rate doesn't go to day half that day? How can you budget for the rate being almost cut in half with no warning?
It's a good question. And I will say that even now, right, you're kind of held accountable to that, not held accountable, but that is a problem. If not everyone gets on your bus with the current system, then your rates are lower. Mm-hmm. So, and I think, and I don't know how each of you address the attendance policies, your organizations. Now, of course, there's sometimes people have minutes, right? But do you have an attendance policy? Do you hold people accountable or not? Or, but either way, you're going to have some days that are, I don't know how you get around that, because sometimes people miss, even in the current system.
Dan asks, is there an estimate on when, if approved, the proposal would go into effect?
Yes, so all the details of this would have to be worked out by the beginning of September, so that includes all the questions about how SSAs would do this, what the rules would look like and all that. And then if it went through, best case would be that it would be implemented on March 1st of 2019. That would be the earliest it could happen. And if it doesn't happen by then, though, then it probably isn't going to happen until, that would mean it would.
July.
It depends on what the next administration would do, so.
And then John asks, so what is the literal rationale for 5+ passengers being over $5 below 26%, the rate of for 1 to 4 passengers.
So what I was told that they did was, they took the per mile rate and stuck that into the per trip rate. Look, I'm not gonna say this as well as you could, Gary. So they used the per mile rate to base out the per trip rates. Now they did you have a model that at first had like 1 to 2 per trip, that was like 1 to 2 passengers.
It was ridiculous.
3 to 4, 5 to 6, so they rolled them up and really did 1 to 4 because that's what matches the community integration at this time. So that was kind of the rush, and plus the simplified assistance. And they were also looking at what would it take for a provider to be able to take somebody back and forth to, maybe they don't go to day services, maybe they're going to their employment services, so that you could do that. So it would help those individuals. There'd be more, because it costs more to transport just 1 or 2 people. So they increase the cost, the reimbursement rate for that smaller amount of people.
John, does that answer your question? Yes. Okay. And that's all we've got on here so far. Oh, wait. Dan says, I know there's a lot of negative feedback and valid concerns, but I do want to say the way I see it, this helps rural providers tremendously. ADS routes in our county typically last an hour and a half, and to pick up 4 to 6 people in big lift vehicles. It is hard to pick up more people without having more than 2 hour long routes, which are ridiculous for individuals to be on a vehicle that long. I agree.
I totally disagree. I mean, we have a bigger vehicles, and our cutoff is no more than 1 hour, regardless. Because if you do more than an hour, it's just
Out in the community, in the rural communities,
Yeah,
it's not an option. If
yeah,
they
that's
pick up
true.
5
The
people,
rural community,
15
you're right.
miles. I'm going 35 minutes to
That's
pick up 2.
right.
Yeah, everybody has to understand that if you live in a metropolitan, you are affected differently than if you live in a rural area. There is no one size fits all, and I know everybody in this room thinks from their perspective, but you have to think about it as a statewide system, because it is a statewide system. And Scott's absolutely correct. I mean, it is transportation needs, and how is routes run, and how many people you pick up at each time, and how far apart they are is totally different than if you're in Cleveland and you've got closer proximity and more people in closer proximity and how you do things. Again, this is, and I'm not saying this because I think this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm saying that because when we looked at all of those things combined in a statewide system, you are not going to address every single concern, unless you go to a cost-based system, then you will. But in a fee-for-service program, you take everything into consideration, and you come up with something.
Another question from Bill. When is the per mile rate applicable?
Is it available?
Applicable.
Well, it's when it's providing
Well, it is
service.
applicable the same way it is today, which means if you are providing transportation, what people have coined as homemade for personal care transportation, that's not what it is, it's mileage. It's not to and from a day array service unless, because the rule allows for it, unless everybody so chose to do it that way. I can tell you from the perspective of this proposal, that's not, we haven't had a lot of conversation around that, whether that caveat stays in the rule or not. But it also is for once a person gets to their drop-off point and then goes somewhere during the daytime, you can charge that mileage. While they are, I'm gonna call it in their day service realm before they go home.
Or HPC services can be provided after day program and on the weekends for residential facilities or HPC providers too.
Yeah, going to the grocery store, going to
Right,
the park.
banking, medical.
Hopefully not going to staff's kids' soccer games. I threw that in there just for.
So Bill, as a follow-up question, we got some more in between there. So then this is part of an individual's NMT budget? The per mile?
No,
Just the per trip for the NMT.
just the
right?
per trip.
What was the question?
This is then part of the individual's NMT budget?
And that all ends up, that all has to get hammered out at the state level as to what is gonna be put in the maximum for non-medical transportation and what will go under the OBD as far as mileage is concerned.
Bill, let us know if that answers your question. Bo asked, why couldn't this be rolled out as a pilot program to see what works and what doesn't, and then regroup and go from there?
Have they ever done anything like that?
They have, I don't know if they've done it around
Pilot program?
transportation, but they do pilots, absolutely done pilots, so maybe that's, I don't know. I don't know if we've got this much energy bringing this much money into the system, additional
If it's gonna
money.
be paid for by Medicaid, then you have to get CMS to agree to the pilot.
To the pilot.
Yeah.
Dan asked, so would the maximum 2 trips per day still apply?
For NMT, yes, you're only gonna be allowed to have 2 trips per day. HP services, that's completely different. That's a completely different.
What-
To your drop-off point and back home from wherever that may be.
Yeah.
And that could be different. I mean, I think there had been some talk too that some people, I mean, it's what fits in your budget. If you go, but maybe, that probably will just confuse things, but there has been talks about to say, does that need to be limited? Is it more about your budget and your individualized plan?
I know you hit this already, but I know a couple of months or so ago, actually longer than that, they had talked about taking the NMT and HPC and putting it in one budget. And like,
Right.
instead of
That's what
having 2
God
different
really
silos, that's what God may want, but I don't know how you
That's why
could
we did
logistically,
that, yeah.
I mean, everybody's,
Well, they wanted to put it in one and put a limit to it, and I said,
Mm.
oh, that'd be great, so
But
if
then
I
you're
live in
really-
Marietta, Ohio, I'm gonna give this example. I live in Marietta, Ohio, and the closest hospital is in West Virginia, by the way, it's a very good hospital, it's 20 miles down the street, can't go there. It's West Virginia, because my Medicaid card's good in
Ohio, not.
So if I need any type of, legitimate medical services, I gotta go to Columbus, Ohio. That's the closest place. So how do you encompass all of those differences across the state and come up with a mileage cap? That's beyond my comprehension.
Not to hammer out the whole issue, but I totally understand the 5+ passengers. But we already talked about, there hasn't been an increase in per trip rates since, 14 years now? So right now, based on this proposal, if this goes through, we're category 7, we're gonna take a $3.71 hit. So there hasn't been an increase, but now we're gonna take a hit. We're taking a huge hit. So I get it.
For those trips,
For the people who have 5 or more passengers, and I can tell you right now, every single one of my routes have more than 5 passengers because of the homes that we have, the ICS homes, the waiver homes. They all have to be going to the same location or they're being split up, and it's part of that route, and it makes the most logistic and geographical sense. This is why.
I have a neighborhood in Reynoldsburg. 9 of my individuals at my Grove City site live in the same neighborhood. Am I going to split it up and send 2 vans? Then I'm going to have to hire somebody else. We already have enough issues hiring people in the field. So
you would have to look, right, and see what would be best for your organization. I do ask once again for you that have diversified services, so please make sure you look at the big picture numbers. Don't silo yourself within your own organization and make sure, and if those numbers are really bad, when you look at the big number for all your services, And if you're having huge losses, please send me the numbers, okay? That's what we need to see, are your actual numbers. That will be very helpful.
Well, remember that, I mean, I want to go back to the goal of this to begin with was to transport less people in vehicles simultaneously.
Right.
So, that.
Which is gonna come down to.
Whether I agree or disagree with that, I'm telling you that was the goal.
And this is coming down the pike, whether we all agree with it or not. And even if we push back on this proposal, it's coming. So I think a whole other issue here is to say, how good are we as providers at looking at national trends and knowing what's coming our way? Because this is a push across the nation. So we can push back for a while, but we're not going to keep this at bay forever. So how do we make these changes in our system?
I just have a question.
Sure.
So if I have a 15-passenger vehicle and I only transport 5 people, or I only transport 4 people in my 15-passenger vehicle,
You get $84.
I'm assuming I get the
21.
the 1 to
You
4
get
passengers,
$84.
right? So it doesn't really matter the vehicle.
The vehicle
How
doesn't
many
matter.
people are
Correct.
Not based on tax.
And all of the vehicle requirements, go out, kick the tires, flick the lights, you got storage compartments, all of those things in this proposal are gone.
So the vehicles are irrelevant. It's how many people am I moving?
Right.
Is what you're saying. Correct. Because I'm hearing both people say, well, I had bigger vehicles, but we want smaller vehicles. That's irrelevant. If you're moving 4 people, everybody's going to move 1 to 4 people. It doesn't matter what you're moving them in.
That's what
I can put a
they want.
semi out there, put 4 people in it, I'm going to get that rebate.
You're gonna get $84.
Okay. So I think that's the confusing thing, because half the people are making about a vehicle, and another half of people are making about moving people. So
And this is about moving people.
if it's about moving people, then it shouldn't matter what you put people in.
Right.
Then you got a clause in there that says, well, if we put a wheelchair in there, then we're going to make more. Well, just because it's a wheel, we use the term wheelchair, but there's a lot of people that can't find steps, and need a lift to get in the
Right,
vehicle.
that's part of the add-on.
So those people count as the add-on?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if they're using the wheelchair to load and unload, but they're once they're on the bus or on the vehicle, they're transferring to a wheelchair, to an actual seat, then the provider is able to get the wheelchair, the
But I
add-on.
still question, is it wheelchair? Because we've got people that don't use a wheelchair. I have to use the lift to get them in the van.
Well, and that's what I mean.
Somehow what are you using to get them on the left?
Staff assistant.
Okay, where they're
I'm
actually
charged
standing
with
in
writing
the,
that portion of the rule.
It's just a term that's confusing.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah, I'm not gonna go
wheelchair.
write up all this stuff if this thing doesn't get anything underneath its feet, because I'm not
that's
gonna
like
waste my time.
hyperlapsing.
But the concept is the person needs a modification. That modification doesn't mean it has to be currently a wheelchair tie down, which currently is what's required if the vehicle is under 9 passengers, for example. So you're absolutely correct. This is not about the vehicle. It's about how many people and what the people requirements are that are in the vehicle.
So,
Because the other requirements are you have time limits on getting them to and from, how long they're in the vehicle and things like that. So being on the selling side of it, we get people that are always confused that, well, I can't, I don't want that 14 passenger. Why? It doesn't make any difference if I spend $50 for this pen or $5 for a pen. If it does, it's the expenses are there. But when all the vehicles are X amount of money, you're going to spend $30,000 on a vehicle, so, and you can spend upwards of more. So that's, in seeing this, I can see where people are confused because they're making it about a vehicle and all that. That's why I had to answer that. Because I was confused.
I think the other area that we really need to, as a group, need to really consider is our individuals are aging, so their needs are going to change. I know one specific route that I have 3 passengers that have to be secured in a wheelchair while being transported. And I did purchase a vehicle that had that flexibility. And unfortunately, it's an 18-capacity vehicle, but it had that flexibility to allow me to be able to transport 3 individuals utilizing a wheelchair, not waiver funding, but ICF, all coming from the same exact home. I think, you know, regardless of what the state wants to do about minimizing or taking our vehicles and putting them smaller, you're gonna still have those bigger vehicles because you're still gonna have the need for transporting more than one passenger, more than two passengers in a wheelchair. And I'm sorry, I can tell you right now, the vans, the Grand Caravans or whatever vans, they're only equipped for one. There are other vehicles out there, but it's still a bigger
They cost $55,000.
It's a cost.
We know what they are.
So, I'm sorry, we got to get through some of these on here. So to clarify, and this goes back to what Bill had asked, this is Shelby asking. So to clarify, number 2 on the proposal is for HPC mileage.
But that you would be able to use it also, that same rate. You'd be using it during day services also to take people out into the community while in the program.
Okay.
So you'd have two different, that's a time right now you don't get any reimbursement. You would now be being reimbursed for that part of the service.
So Brenda asked, or comments, the Dodd group had some foundations they worked from, areas in which the group agreed, and third rails to address down the road. Their proposal does a good job of meeting the foundations, which are build transportation capacity for community-based and employment supports, increase flexibility of transportation, incentivize integrated supports, and reduce complexity in authorizing, providing, and accessing transportation. And thank you, Brenda. Wendy says, while I appreciate the new billable rates, this will hit those providers hard that have large vehicles, revamping the routes, adding staff hours to the residential homes, folks staying home longer, etc. Staff hours increase, more routes. Still not sure why 5 or more is the cutoff. I am not sure that billing the mileage rate during the day is going to make up for the cut on our per trip NMT rates.
I agree.
Show us your, again, I'm going to keep asking you to send us your numbers in. Send us your numbers that showing that, and if this means that you take people out more and are in better compliance with the HPC setting wrong. I don't know how much you're taking people out now.
And then Trent asked, has this been done in any other state?
I don't think this specific, as far as I know, unless somebody else from this meeting knows, that this exact model has been done in other states. I will tell, I'm sure because every state's a little bit different, I will say that there were quite a few states that when we went out and looked that they have actually rolled the transportation in with their day rate.
Yeah,
and we threw that around and that was quickly thrown out. So it seems like as a group, no one was really interested in combining the two services together to say that transportation is just like a sub thing we do and that the main service is either day services or whatever service they're in, and that we would just roll it in.
Before Medicaid, it was a bundle service.
Right, so, and
I know because we had talked about it, and then that was completely thrown out.
And Gary can give the history behind that, is that the state used to bundle it, and now they don't bundle it. Gary has.
Well, I mean, you got all sorts of issues around the choice of provider when you start putting these things together. And, I'm sorry, but if you have one transportation maximum, gee, wouldn't you like to be the lucky provider who actually provided transportation that day that went over the max? And how would you know? I mean, logistically, it is extremely difficult because you've got a cap for multiple providers. Right now, for the most part, you have caps that are for a provider of service to an individual. Or if it's more than one provider, at least it's pretty clearly defined under non-medical transportation because it's split up between the two. So it's within the cap between the two. But on the mileage side, could you imagine you've got a residential provider that's also eating into the cap? And you have no clue at what rate they're eating into the cap, folks. I mean, this becomes logistically very difficult.
That's all I got.
All the questions. It's not an easy topic, and it's not, there's no way to
Every
make.
time we talk about rates, folks, it's not easy.
Right, and there's no way with transportation to make it so that we can accommodate every single situation and make sure that everyone's always taking there's a limited pot of money. I mean, this does have the advantage of bringing in.
We got modified vehicles running around, going to grocery stores and doctor's appointments and everything else right now at 45 cents a mile.
And we've got unfunded services during the day, right?
And we've got
Totally
totally unfunded mandates during the daytime. So if you have to look at this, I know you're siloed in your departments, I get it, but you can't look at this through those silos. Because if you do, then anybody can make an argument of how good or how bad it is within your particular silos. Your residential people are gonna go, this is great, and you're going, no, it's not.
How is the residential folks? Oh, in regards to
Oh, it's a
increasing.
huge increase on the residential side.
Oh, yeah, because if you have providers, you have residential providers who have vehicles.
It's a huge increase on the residential side.
Melissa asks, will budget limits remain the same for NMT?
The budget's gonna have to change based on, if this does go through, the budget's gonna have to increase if it's a 1 to 4 passenger. I mean, it's like.
Has to go up, right?
So what was the discussion was, is you're gonna take the highest tier, the highest budget, regardless if that person needs it, because, and if they utilize it, great, if they don't, then that money doesn't get spent. So in order to streamline the process, the SA has to get the highest, and that's the maximum. I mean, let's face it, we don't always, and the other discussion there was about, the majority of folks, they don't attend every single day, and pause is based on every single,
Not necessarily.
240 days
You
or
are
whatever.
speaking, and I'm gonna say this over and over and over again, you guys are speaking from your experience. Go to the other 87 counties and it's different. Okay, so you're speaking from your experience. Some narrow it down to what they expect. Others, like Franklin County, Cuyahoga County, 260 times. In fact, what Franklin County does is they put it all in as miles. So you'll never, ever, ever have a unit problem, ever, because they put it all in at miles, and then they put the maximum in. But don't make the mistake of thinking that the other 87 counties do that, because they don't.
Roy asks, so what's the next step and end goal of this meeting?
I think we need to, and it doesn't have to happen right now, we need to decide as members which way we want to go on this. This is what's been proposed to DOT, and then we need to decide as this goes through the process. And assuming it ends up at the end of the process looking like it does right now, I mean, that would be a key thing that doesn't get pulled apart or the rules get changed in some way. As it moves through, we just need to decide, do you as members want OPRA to support this or not? And the membership's going to be split on this. We can see that. So we'll have to come to some kind of a, as this progresses and we see how this goes, to come to the decision as a membership, as yay or nay on this. So I think it's something that we need to be really solid on, knowing our numbers and how this will affect you, and then to watch it closely to see as it develops if there's any changes, or are there changes we can live with as a membership, if not, how the rules are actually worded, which Gary's going to have some input in, so that's awesome. Gary's going to help us out on that. Now, what DOT, what is given to DOT doesn't mean that's what they'll take. So there's so many things that could happen to this as it goes down the process. I think we just need to be really aware, and I think to be really aware that even as this doesn't go through, like I said earlier, I mean, this is how across the nation things are moving into those smaller groups and everything. And if you're providers, I think every time this is what I would do as a provider, just my opinion. Every time you buy a new big vehicle, you think you're going to buy these big vehicles. At this time, you need to think long and hard about it. Say, is this the right thing to do? And if we're going to do it, are we okay with the fact knowing that in the future it may move away from that? know, things could happen, and maybe you could stick with the big vehicles, but maybe, I think you just need to know the risk involved. That's all. You know, you need to make really well-informed decisions and think about, especially, right now things are changing quickly. How is your organization changing to adapt, and how well are you at predicting what's coming down the pipe?
The other comment that was brought up is a critical comment, folks. And, you know, everything that we do, you know, the department has an expectation that we do it with less people, which means what's that?
Right.
And the reality is, right now, we can't hire staff.
Right.
And I'm still waiting for someone to call me up and say, hey, I've got no problem. I got a great line outside my door. Do you know anybody that needs any staff? I don't get those calls. I get all the other calls, which is, how in the world am I ever going to hire anybody who doesn't have 6 points on their driver's license, who isn't convicted of something that disqualifies them, and, oh, gee, have to have a high school diploma or equivalent to prove it. So, and won't do something incredibly stupid tomorrow. So I'm not, guys, I get it. You're not going to tell me that this will cause people to have to hire more people that we can't hire.
They're not there.
Right.
They're not there.
And
They don't exist.
And I think it's going to, and you look at that, I mean, the providers who are going to do the best are the ones who are the best at recruiting and retaining staff, right? That's becoming, and that's across all businesses, right? It's not just our field. This is across all fields. So, and I encourage you all, I know some of you have done an amazing job at making sure that you're being top-notch at recruiting those staff and retaining them. And to make sure you've got OPRA's doing so many things to try to assist you. I know it's just little pieces here and there, but PSP Ohio and the free PO and all that, we're trying to do everything we can around. This is an issue across the country. But you've got to be on the top of your game at the recruitment and retention. Absolutely. And using those remote supports then to save your staff from things you can't use remote support for, and trying to push that through, building those natural supports more than ever. You know, I think we have to always look at those things when we can.
We just have a quick question on what does, because they asked to see page 2, what does PDGS stand for, and that is Participant Directed Goods and Services. So.
Right.
That's folks with a cell phone.
Yes.
And I know I'm going to be like everyone's big pain in the butt, but I really need to advocate for companies like ourselves and many other companies too. And you know, I like the 2-tier system. I really like the fact that you're looking at passengers versus the type of vehicles. It really levels up. It does definitely level up the playing field. I'm not asking for, you know, we originally were not asking that. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Increase our rate. We just wanted to keep it, but now you're drastically decreasing it. We're just saying don't do such a drastic decrease of the 5 or more passenger. You know, I know originally we talked about, you know, we need to be able to work within our own budget too and so forth. But you know, doing that $3.71 decrease, that's huge. It's a huge decrease. We're just asking to don't make it such a huge, drastic decrease. We're not asking for an increase for the 1990 from what that rate is, you know, because obviously that kind of helps in this area, the 1 to 4 passengers, even though we don't have that. But I'm saying, you know, don't knock it.
And I did make a note of that, and I will say that they've already adjusted that rate once, that bigger group that you belong to.
Get one up.
They did, right, they did adjust it once.
What do you mean? No, they originally was like a 3-tier system, 3 or 4-tier system.
Well, since they got,
It was all based on miles before and all based on mileage rates when it first started out. And I went, you people are, I don't even know how you would implement this system. I don't even know how you would implement that system personally, but I will tell you at this juncture, because this has gotten exposure, don't be surprised if you want to change any of these rates. If the question comes back, well, where are you going to take it from?
mean?
In other words, they're gonna say, well, you know, we've already vetted this, so if you wanna add $1 here, where are you gonna take it away from?
The 1 to 4 passenger.
Okay.
I mean, okay, so like I said, when we started this process, when I got involved in this,
And
there
then
was a
I'm
discussion
gonna tell you right now, there will be another set of providers that won't like that. So, no matter what you do, you're
You're
gonna
still
have
increasing
somebody,
the 1 to
you're gonna
4
have
passenger.
somebody that's not gonna like it. I'm just,
Because
And I
have
understand
providers
that.
that are already doing the 1 to 4 pretty much for all their transportation. So it goes both
But at the
ways.
current rate, at the whatever, 19, whatever category, and they're doing it at that current rate. So we're not decreasing their rate, we're actually increasing their rate, but you're decreasing our rate. So it's almost like we're being punished because we have the bigger size vehicles, because we're accommodating so many people, so many behaviors, so many passengers that require the accessible vehicle. It's like, and you know, I know we've been accused of, companies like us have been accused of being the cash cow. We're not cash cows. Cash cows, I mean, it costs a lot of money to purchase a vehicle of the capacity. It costs a lot of money to maintain, repair, God knows the depreciation, the value, the cost of gas, everything. I mean, I can't even tell you how much money we spend on trying to maintain these vehicles. And we as a company do our due diligence to go after as much grant money as we possibly can to decrease that cost. So we're still able to provide that service. So going back to the 1 to 4 passenger, yes, right now they're doing it at the 19-some rate. Their rates are getting increased. But we as a company, we as a provider that transport more than 5 passengers in one route, we're getting this huge hit. That's a huge,
So I will make sure to bring that up to see if we can just, you know, yeah. Yeah, and I don't know, all we can do is throw that out there. I don't know, I know some of the buy-in from the county boards to add this much money in is because they want to see the smaller groups off, so they're bought in on that.
right.
But it would still,
For not downsizing the ICS, they're disincentivizing certain systems to try to get them.
right, that's exactly it, that's it. And that's where I think everyone has to be prepared for this type of approach to be taken, and increasingly, this is what's coming at us.
I mean, the reality is, some of us have close situations,
Yeah.
but I've got the $55,000 van in
Mhm.
Champaign County that I'm taking 3 people in a wheelchair and one other person.
Mhm.
So I'm losing on that one today's rate. So I think it's what perspective you're sitting in where you're going to look at this rating.
So we have a couple comments that have come in. Brenda says, so while we have been focused on revenue, will we be discussing cost reductions in the regulations such as the thing Gary mentioned?
I didn't.
Oh, right. Repeat that.
So while we have been focused on revenue, will we be discussing cost reductions in the regulations such as this thing Gary has mentioned? And that was
And it's a savings.
5 minutes ago.
Right, that's where Lisa's comment, look at the whole picture.
Yeah.
You're going to save money and not have to do all the drug tests, annual inspections.
Lisa says, leave the 1 to 4 passenger rate alone. A rate increase for NMT is long overdue. And then Bo said, whoever is speaking is totally correct, and I believe that came in when Marie was speaking. And that's all we got so far.
Okay.
Right. If you're right.
Spending more money.
can you speak up, sir?
Yeah.
Again, my question earlier was, it's not about the vehicle, it's about the people. And we just went back to making it about the vehicle. So a 15-passenger vehicle, let's say, we agree costs $55,000. If you get a modified minivan, you're gonna spend $40,000. It's gonna transport 5 people. One wheelchair on it, and 3 other people. So now you're gonna tell me that you need 3 modified minivans to transport the same amount of people 1 vehicle would. So now you're spending $75,000 versus the 55. And originally I asked the question, it's not about the vehicle, it's about how many people are transported. You just made the comment that a 15-passenger vehicle transported 4 people in it. Then you should be able to get that other rate.
Well, I'm good with, I'm trying to say where I'm at.
I don't know.
I have those 55 and explain
And I
that
get
it's not just one provider
I
has
get
this
you.
area.
I
It's not about the vehicle,
I-
it's about the cards you're dealt and you gotta live within it.
Right, because the other thing, most people don't get, and I I respect what you're saying, 88 counties. We're talking about moving somebody from A to B. Don't care where you are, okay? It's the same comment we have with the county agencies too. I don't know why Licking County's vehicles has to be different than Mahoning County, or it's got four wheels. You're taking mommy from her house to the store. Kroger's are everywhere. I don't know why it costs more money in your county to go to Kroger than it does in this county to go to Kroger. So your typical reimbursement is the same everywhere. Everybody gets the same amount of money to get to Kroger and get back home from Kroger. But for some reason, once you get into your door, it's different because I'm this provider and that provider, and I understand all that. So the tier is confusing because, again, my question was, it should not be about a vehicle. So, but what I see with the reimbursement is about a vehicle because of the number of people that I'm getting reimbursed for. And that's just my opinion. It's very confusing because it keeps going back to the same thing. The typical reimbursement right now hasn't been changed in 14 years. And this proposal is saying, okay, after 14 years, we're going to be doing it for less money. Makes no sense. The proposal should be for more money because it costs more money today than it did 14 years ago. That's the bottom line. And again, I just, like you said, if you're going to go, smaller vehicles have a cost, they're 30, and if I need two of them, now I'm spending 60.
Right.
I'm actually spending $5,000 more on the vehicle, plus I have to get more staff. I have to have one more person. So it's a lot more expensive to transport less people.
If it's somebody that requires somebody to be with them, I could be two more staff.
Yeah, yeah. So, that's just, it's confusing because we say it's not about this, but then it comes back to that.
And it is, so, and I just want to respond. So you're saying it is more expensive to move around less people at a time?
Well,
Depends.
certainly it is.
Yeah.
I mean, move 100 people in 100 vehicles or move 100 people in
Half that
5
amount.
vehicles. I mean, it's mathematics. It's like that.
Again, I'm just gonna say this because that's not what the proposal was about. And you can go back and argue what the proposal was about.
I guess,
Because the proposal was about moving less people together.
right.
Okay, so if we want to talk about pure efficiencies,
Yeah.
we can have a totally different conversation because this waiver isn't built on pure efficiencies. Not even remotely built on pure efficiencies. We can have that argument all day long because I take you with Franklin County where 70% of the people in this county get served one-on-one. Is that efficient? Not even remotely. Okay, so this isn't, the context of this is not an efficiency conversation.
Right.
If we want to move it to one, we can. And I will 100% agree with you. But that wasn't the context of the proposal.
Then again, I'm a third party sitting in, just trying to soak in. I'm not a flyer. So I get what you're saying. It's not an easy task.
It isn't.
What was the original rate on the 1 to 4? 1990, is that right?
1990 for category, well, depending on what category,
What
but
was the 5? But there never was a second tier.
No.
It was 1990 flat, right? Okay.
yeah, it was based on the type of vehicle that you have or the number of passengers you have. That's what it's based on right now.
Okay.
So right now, it's not a two-tier system. We don't get a wheelchair add-on. We don't have this 1 to 4 passenger system. So,
Right.
but bottom line, we're taking a hit because we have we can transfer more than 4 passengers. That's how
And your rate's going down.
And now my rates are completely coming down.
That doesn't make sense.
So, I mean, and I'll be honest with you, I crunched my numbers, I looked at every single passenger I have, I was really surprised that I actually don't have as waiver, I'll just say individuals who have a waiver. I have a lot of individuals with ICF that utilize the wheelchair, but it's odd, but I don't have as many individuals that utilize the wheelchair or need to use the wheelchair lift for an accommodation. So I looked at every single aspect, everything. And we haven't had an increase, and now we're taking a hit.
I get what she's saying, because the incentive is to move less people at a time. So you're getting an increase there, but now you're going to punish the people who are forced to move more. sake of the, I mean, I guess,
And then
just
increase.
based on the budget,
Well,
but obviously you only have so much money to work with.
Right, and that's where the
Makes sense.
problem comes in, I think, is that this is already asking them to put in a million, 15 to 17 million more dollars, right? And so if we left the rate that we have now, but still added financial incentives for smaller groups, I don't know. And the first proposal that we turned in, what was that, about a year ago, did more of that, and Doc was like, no. They're like, start over.
Wait, which one was that?
So that was the one that was turned in last, not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before.
Oh, that was,
That was a good, providers were loving that, but God was like, right.
Why
Go
did
back,
that?
start it over.
Can you refresh, what was the proposal?
I don't remember the numbers. I'm sorry, I don't remember the numbers. I just remember it was very provider friendly. It left pretty much the NMT alone, except the current rates, except to add some money to do in smaller groups. So it's exactly what he's saying, that, gosh, why can't we just leave the rates alone, but still add some, a financial bump for doing
So
smaller.
leave the rates alone and still take that 17 million, I mean, that the counties have to put into. I mean, originally the discussion was you're gonna restructure or reallocate funds with, and not increase the budget at all. So everything got reallocated, we get a hit, but you're still putting 17, so counties still have to put 17 million.
So they didn't, because in the end, there was somewhere across the process, and I'm trying to remember, I think it was maybe last summer, where some people from that group, from the bigger transportation group, were sitting with Lori Horvath, and Lori said, it's true, it's gonna cost more money to transport smaller groups. And that's where we had a little window of opportunity to say we could get more money in the system. We had this small crack in the door to get more money in the system. And so how do we try to make that happen and keep as many people happy as we can while bringing in that money and try, because it's conflicting interests across, right? What God wants isn't necessarily what providers want, but it isn't necessarily what county boards want. So it's trying to find some middle ground here.
And I get it, you're not gonna please everybody, but I got my question. I know last year we did a poll that there was, someone did a poll and it had so many different providers, and county boards were actually part of this online poll too, as to like what kind of vehicles you have, how many passengers. And I know when we looked at it, we're like, why are county boards even part of this? Because they're transitioning out. So now you really need to focus on just the providers. So when this was all put out, what providers, who were those providers that you spoke to? Who were those providers? I know we were part of the poll.
A poll that
No, not OPRA, it was the NMT, the statewide NMT group did.
Okay.
And I believe I thought there was a poll that OPRA did too.
I don't, not specific.
Not specific.
But then we did, the HR committee sent
Right.
out a poll, yes.
We've got a couple things on here. John said you can't simply ignore existing fleets and route sizes. If you must decrease 5+ to such a degree, how about a multi-year phase-in? Bo says correct. This should either be a phase-in or ran as a pilot program to see if it works. Lisa says problem with phase-in or pilot program, the billing software providers use now would have not to be changed to accommodate this. Not sure about other providers, but we get charged when this happens. So what provider would be willing to pay the fee and accept the loss if it shows it doesn't work and the proposal is changed? John says it may cost more money to transport smaller groups, but that doesn't mean that it takes less money than the current rates to continue transporting existing 5+ passenger routes.
Well, and that's all good input, and I have made notes on all this. What's that?
I said, put that down.
Yeah, I have written this all down. So, I think the next step is this is good feedback. I will definitely take this to that bigger NMT group with Scott Marks, and I think we need to keep an eye on this. And like I said, ultimately, as a group of members, we're going to have to decide which way we're going to go on this.
So are you guys going to take another poll as to whether or not, I mean, if all majority of OPRA members agree or disagree?
I can't put it for sure, so my next step will be to take it to the OPRA board meeting, it's just next week.
We have a policy next week also.
And then a policy, okay. So this will keep running through the committees, I think we need to keep an eye on it. I don't want to, go too far forward with it also, when we don't know if this is even what it's going to be, we don't know if it's going to even make it to the next step. But I think everyone needs to be aware that it might, too. So we just have to kind of keep it on our radar, determine where you're going to stand on
I
this.
don't know how you're gonna do this. For everything we did on the ACM committee, we actually ended up having a vote.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're gonna do it the same way.
That's what I was thinking about, but I think we need to, even decide on that yet. And I don't, like I said, I don't want to jump the gun. We might not even need to go to a vote, but ultimately, I think if we keep this kind of variability within the membership, they won't need to do a vote. So I don't know how to resolve it. And then we'll just all have.
But we know for sure it's not gonna get, it's not gonna go through this administrative year because there still seems to be disagreement among organizations. So if it's, bottom line, it's done for this year. It has to wait 2 months.
September would be the soonest that it would.
September 2000.
Yeah, 2018, yeah.
You're not gonna come up with a proposal that doesn't have disagreement. If that is your goal, well, there is one proposal that would come. Everybody gets their cost covered the way they want to get it.
Can you make that happen, please? Yeah. So, and I think that's a good example that, we did have a similar situation in the ICS not so long ago. And that's what we did, we took a membership vote.
And there were good pieces and there were bad pieces.
Yeah. Okay, do we have other questions?
Just one more, question for Dan, or comment, really. We've been running a route for 5 years now that is around 45 miles to pick up 3 individuals, 2 of which are in wheelchairs. This route takes 1.25 hours. This would actually help us not take a loss on those routes.
Yeah, so winners and losers,
Yeah.
and it's just how does it all balance out in the end, and what do we think about it? So, gosh, I appreciate all your input. I know this is such a difficult topic. It truly is, and it's pretty passionate. So, we'll just keep you informed on any changes. Make sure to crunch your numbers good. I'd love for you to share them, because it really helps me too when I go to, I know that's one thing when I go to Scott Marks, he's like, well, did they do a financial analysis that can see, that really looks at the big picture? And so we need to do, so that he can really see how it's going to affect you. That would be great. Thanks for attending. If you have other questions you think of later, just shoot me an email or call me. All right, thank you. Thanks for those who drove. I know you had a fun drive. Everybody got signed on the list?